We are privileged this morning to go one-on-one with Representative Mike Rogers of Alabama's 3rd Congressional District. Congressman Rogers is a key player on national security issues in the Congress, serving as a senior member of the Armed Services Committee, and importantly for us, as the chairman of the Transportation Security Subcommittee, which of course has jurisdiction and oversight responsibilities for the Transportation Security Administration. Mr. Chairman, thank you for taking the time to be with us.
Glad to be with you, Joel.
You know, TSA, it's an issue and an organization that everybody up here has strong opinions about, as I'm sure you're well aware. Over the past 2 years, you and your subcommittee have really taken a deep dive into looking at the agency, its operations, its regulations, 24 hearings, member briefings. No other committee has been as active as you have been. As you look back and reflect and think about where the agency is today, what are your impressions of what the agency is doing right, where it's got its focus right, and conversely, where you think challenges are?
Well, let me start with the challenges. I think the first challenge is it's bloated. It's big and it's bloated, and it's difficult to try to get them to pare that down with the pressure from the White House to grow the union ranks in TSA. So that's a problem that I think Mr. Pistol is still wrestling with, how to deal with that. We've got to get more efficiencies there, and I think that first starts with size. Second area they got some real problems is just trying to manage effectively this big bloated system. But now they're doing some things better. I like the fact that they've got more focused on threat-based activities. We can't treat everybody like a potential terrorist. We've got to be smart about it. And they've been moving more in that direction. I'm very happy with the new pre-check program. That is a wonderful move in the right direction. I would like to see it stepped up. And that's going to require some advertising on their part to let people know it's there and how they can participate. I'm commonly, when I'm back in the district and in other places up here, I talk to people about pre-check and they've never heard of it, people who fly a lot. So I think an effort on their part to step that up and make it a more global program across the airport systems, you'll find more people getting into it and therefore getting out of the lines for the infrequent travelers, which will make their experience a lot better as well.
You and your staff did a detailed report, 5 recommendations, 5 areas of focus where you all thought that the agency could make improvements to become leaner, more efficient, more effective. If somebody put you in charge of the world today and said, I want to make one change at TSA, what would that be?
It would be to reduce the ranks. And I can't just say one, that's a biggie, but I would like to see the ranks reduced, and I would like to see some significant partnering with the private sector. I want to see the SPP program stepped up where airports have more options as to what they want to do with security. Folks need to understand that even if you privatize the screening process as an airport, TSA is still overseeing it. But I think we would have a much leaner, more effective and efficient screening process with better customer service. That's one of the best things about having a private sector is the airports can fire them if they aren't treating their passengers with dignity and courtesy. Whereas with TSA, it's just a completely different animal, and the airports, have their hands tied. So I would like to see the SPP program stepped up and the manpower in those airports that are still screened by TSA shrunk so that it's a better experience and people have more confidence in the process.
You mentioned the SPP program. There was a change made in the law this year to make that work more effectively for airports. A lot of Republicans up here, however, have not been satisfied with how that's played out over the course of the past 8 or 9 months. Do you see that issue going away, or is that something you think is going to be out there in the future as something that people are going to continue to focus on?
We're going to continue to push it. It's going to have to be pushed. I think TSA is giving lip service to wanting to broaden the program. They're not following through, and I think you're going to see more members, including more Democrat members, get behind that initiative as we continue to have growing complaints from the public sector about their experience in going through screening. So we won't let up on that until we finally get it. But again, that comes into that same dynamic I talked about a little while ago. The president has great allegiance to the unions for what they've done for him politically, and the unions want to see more federal employees. So we're going to have to keep pushing, but we'll get there. You know, the fact is, it is the problem experiences that passengers have with this TSA screeners is just growing worse. So we're going to have to do something different. And the fact is, the airports that have privatized screening have had good experiences.
You mentioned earlier pre-check and your satisfaction with the agency pushing on that program. I think industry certainly agrees that there's a lot of potential at that. One area of concerns that airports have identified is that with just the elite flyers and global entry participants, you're missing out on a broad swath of potential participants in that program. And absent that critical mass, you run into problems with growing lines and more resources focused in an area where, as you mentioned, people aren't aware that there even is a program and they can participate. What do you think can be done to grow the population of folks participating in pre-check?
Well, information, you know, and I think one of the ways TSA could easily enhance participation is just at the screening lines. Run TV commercials, you know, up on the screens. I don't know if you've seen them, but in the past I've noticed Mr. Pistol himself on the television explaining the process that they're going through about what they can and can't take in and why. Something like that. But every airport where you've got the lines, you're standing there anyway with nothing to do while you're waiting to get your chance to be screened, just run commercials. If you happen to fit in this category, you could be eligible for pre-check, and explain what pre-check is and why it's beneficial to all passengers, even those people who are infrequent passengers and wouldn't qualify. It gets folks out of their line. That in itself, I think, would draw a lot more people into it, but it's probably going to take some broader media as well to explain to folks that this is an option for them. And you will see a lot more participation, but it is very unknown to most travelers right now, and that's, I think, in part because it's a relatively new program, but there hasn't been a significant media effort, and I think they can do that.
One of the things, if you look at TSA policy and shaping it and Congress's role in doing that, is traditionally Congress authorizes laws and reviews them periodically to help shape the direction of the agency. TSA, since it was created, Congress has been unable to get a final TSA authorization bill over the finish line and signed into law. You authored a TSA authorization bill that you passed through the subcommittee last year. There are a whole number of reasons why those bills end up languishing, but I'm just interested in your opinion on whether or not you think that that is a big deal that Congress has been unable to reauthorize TSA, and if so, what you think can be done about it.
It is a big deal, and I've brought it to the attention of the Speaker and the Majority Leader, my frustration that it's unfair to the department not to have Congress to give them some guidelines, some principles, some goals, milestones that we expect from them. I think that, in my view, there's two big obstacles. One is the jurisdictional problems here in the House, and that's also something I've been working on, trying to get the leadership to address. But then the other is just political. You know, the fact is, we could have moved the authorization bill that I passed out of my subcommittee through the full committee and out of the House, but it would have languished in the Senate. They wouldn't have taken it up because of the political dynamic. So what I'm hopeful we can do in the short term, given that the Senate is going to be controlled by the other party from the House, is try to work on the things that we can agree on between their committee structure and ours, and try to move something to at least give the department some structure or some instructions from us. But anything bigger than that's going to be once there's similarities and perspectives on both ends of the Capitol. But there are some things we can move, and I think we're going to have to just limit the scope so that we can get something passed.
Well, you guys have obviously, you and the subcommittee have helped shape policy with oversight hearings and a number of other tools outside of the reauthorization process. As you look back over these past couple of years, what are you most proud of in terms of accomplishments for the subcommittee?
Well, just that. I mean, I think that the aggressive role that we took in our committee structure and our number of hearings did help the department get a sense for what we were expecting from them. So I'm most proud of that, of the report that we came up with. You know, even in the absence of an authorization bill, when the department sees the report, it is a good self-examining tool for them to know what's expected from the Hill. So, you know, there's a lot. I would hope that we see some improvements in their procurement and acquisition and their interaction with the private sector. So to me, that's been one of the areas of glaring shortfall. And that's true in TSA, but it's also true across the entire department. So I hope that at this 2 years, as this 2 years ends, that the department and TSA in particular recognize that's an area for dramatic improvement. And the truth is, without the private sector, we can't do our job up here. The private sector is an integral part of this process. So hopefully we're going to see another very aggressive 2 years and continue our role in trying to bring confidence to the people about TSA, because that is a real shortcoming they've got right now. I've expressed it to Administrator Pistol that he has a confidence problem with the public and with the Congress, and both of which cannot be allowed to continue.
Before we let you go, I'd be remiss if I didn't ask you for an update on fiscal cliff negotiations. Here we are a couple of days away from Christmas, and no puff of smoke of that a deal is right around the corner. What's going on, and what are you expecting as we get to the end of the year?
I don't think we'll have anything before Christmas. There's a couple of things that the Speaker is banning around right now, like extending all the tax rates for anybody that makes less than $1 million a year. I don't really think that's going to get anywhere. When you look at the numbers of what the President wants and what the Speaker's offered, they're only $200 billion away. You know, the President's come down to $1.2 trillion. Boehner's come up to $1 trillion in new revenue. So on the revenue side, we're really not that far apart, but there's no talk of spending or reforms on the spending side, and that's a real problem. And the President's debt commission, you know, acknowledged that there should be a 3-to-1 ratio, that if we're going to have new revenue, there should be 3 times as much spending reforms. So I don't really think we're going to see anything before Christmas. And then I think the week after Christmas, it's going to be real tense around here. But frankly, and this may not be what your participants want to hear, I don't think there's going to be a deal. I fear that we're going to wind up going off the cliff, because I think that's what the President really wants. I think he wants the revenues that come from all rates going up and be able to say it's the Republicans' fault because they wouldn't deal with me. And that's a terrible way to develop policy. And that's going to mean also the sequestration cuts come into effect. You know, $600 billion out of national security and $600 billion out of discretionary, and both of those are going to have a devastating effect on the economy. But right now, I'm feeling pretty cynical about this process. Hope I'm wrong.
Yeah, that's apparent, and I hate to end the interview on a sour note. We'll hope that if it does fall apart at the end of the year, it quickly gets put back together, because as you mentioned, on the national security side, you got defense, you got homeland security. I mean, the sequestration, in addition to the other cuts, it's a pretty profound effect.
It is, and I would say, too, on a high note, CBO issued a report a couple of weeks ago that said, if in fact we did go off the cliff, so to speak, which means the sequestration cuts kick in and all the tax rates go up, we would go into a recession for probably the next year. But then in 2 years, we'd be in better financial shape than we would be if we had a 10-year deal that was kind of mediocre. So if there's any silver lining to not reaching a deal, it would be that it would put our country in good financial position in a couple of years. But in the interim, it'd be painful. I hope I'm wrong. I would love to see a deal. I feel like our country is a very resilient country, and we'll come back to good financial health in a pretty short order. But we've got to recognize you can't keep spending more money than you bring it in, not when you already owe $16 trillion in debt. But we'll do okay.
We'll make you come back in 2 years, and we'll look back on this. We'll show you the tape, and we'll see if you were right on looking in the crystal ball. How about that?
I would love to be wrong.
Well, Mr. Chairman, it's a busy time, and we really appreciate you taking the time to go one-on-one with us. Thank you.
Thank you.